Hi, I'm Andrew Kreisberg. I'm co-creator and executive producer of The Flash.
And I'm Greg Berlanti.
We're really excited for season 2. It's going to have some of the biggest special effects we've ever attempted.
And then we have sort of a new way to introduce all sorts of incredible villains. So we couldn't be more pumped.
Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. This is going to be my Flash Season 2 predictions. There are a couple things we know that are confirmed, a couple things that are still up in the air. Careful for spoilers if you haven't seen the finale yet. I'm going to start with the really big stuff first. Most notably the timeline based on what happened in the episode. So here we go. I know a lot of people are wondering what's happening because now that the Reverse Flash doesn't exist, does that mean that he never originally came back in time and killed Barry's mother? The only thing we know is that the big gateway up in the sky, like the gateway to the multiverse, is going to have some lasting effects on the timeline. So what I think is going to happen is that the events of this finale will stick. Barry's mother won't come back, but we will see a lot of other characters that died, people that we haven't seen in a while coming through that gateway. So when we see other speedsters, when we see some big villains, they'll be from the multiverse, in addition to rising from our current timeline. So the paradox, big time vortex created by Eddie's death isn't going to undo a lot of the really big plot points. Barry's mother isn't going to come back in our timeline, but we could see her in multiverse form. You get how that could work for some of the other characters too. So we'll see Harrison Wells, we'll see the Reverse Flash, we'll see all those characters again, but it won't be the original versions. They'll be from alternate timelines. Like I said, there's some things that they know that they want to do, some things that they're still figuring out. Andrew Kreisberg, the executive producer, you basically said that big vortex in the sky is going to make anything possible. That's a goldmine for writers to bend the laws of physics because, what do we know about the time vortex? We really don't understand how it works. The people that make the show are huge Doctor Who, huge, Hitchhiker's Guide fans. So, if you've watched those shows, not to overthink the logic of time travel too much because it's more of a fantasy. There's hard science time travel like Primer. It's not going to be like that. That's like the graduate degree of time travel movies. So let's talk about the fun stuff. Predictions. Starting with number 7. Cisco is now the new most powerful member of Team Flash after Barry. When the multiverse spills in on itself and timelines start to bleed over into each other, you need a character that can distinguish between them. That's what Cisco's power is. Barry's the one that can use the Speed Force to travel to all these different places, but Cisco is the one that's probably going to help and create the roadmap to the multiverse. That'd actually be a really fun moment to have in the show. They'll probably spend most of the first half of the season just trying to figure it out, so don't expect an actual map of the multiverse anytime soon. That's where I think Rip Hunter will help out. On to number 6, they will do a Death of Firestorm arc. That is Death of Ronnie Raymond. Everyone's been asking the producers, what's going on with Legends of Tomorrow and Firestorm if Ronnie Raymond isn't part of that equation? And he just said, all I'll say is no comment. So it feels like they will do an Identity Crisis Ronnie Raymond death. During the Identity Crisis storyline in the comics, Ronnie Raymond was impaled with a magical sword. It ruptured his containment field, and the residual energy spilled over into Jason Rush, so he became part of the Matrix. That's not what they're going to do on the TV show. They haven't done magic yet, so Robbie Mell probably isn't going to get skewered with a magic sword or anything like that, but they will kill him off in a way that allows Jason Rush to become part of Firestorm. That could be who the Jay Jackson character is. They could have just recast Firestorm because they had a different actor playing him earlier this season. Just remember, if they do kill Ronnie Raymond off, they could always bring him back. There's no such thing as death in the multiverse. Think about what Caitlin said in this episode, the opportunity to go back and see someone you love. She cares more about Ronnie than she cares about destroying the timeline. So that could be a source of falling out between her and Team Flash, just pushing her on the road to Killer Frost. If Ronnie were to die in the mid-season finale and Caitlin asks Barry to go back in time and change things so that he doesn't, and he refuses, that just feels like a really easy moment for them to give those characters that would propel them into Killer Frost. I know Caitlin Snow's metahuman abilities are a big question mark because she looked very different in the episode. When we got that glimpse of her, it was her entire body had changed. I think Cisco not having any idea that he had special abilities is a really good explainer for that. There hasn't been a trigger for Caitlin to activate those abilities yet. Watching the person she loved most in the world die, that would be a good trigger. On to number 5. The Flash vs. Arrow crossover this year will be lighthearted and will kind of rope in with the multiverse time travel arc. Time travel is a huge thing in season 2 of The Flash, so naturally they're probably going to try and use that for comedy in the Arrow vs. Flash crossover. The Flash finale was pretty dark, but I still think that they're going to use the big fun Flaro crossover as something that's supposed to be funny. So regardless of how dark the season gets in terms of storylines and where the characters go emotionally, whenever Oliver and Barry show up in the same episode, it's going to be a lot of fun. And they'll use the opportunity to drop some more references to Oliver's child. I know everyone always asks about that. The Flash versus Arrow crossover is like the best place for that. It's like the most comic book thing that the show ever does. On to number 4, so this is a big one. Eobard Thawne, Harrison Wells, and Eddie will all be back. Tom Cavanaugh is confirmed to be a series regular in season 2, meaning that he'll be in most of the episodes, probably as an alternate version of Harrison Wells, like a Harrison Wells who was not killed by the Reverse Flash. On that same token though, the Reverse Flash will also be back. Matt Letcher, who is like the original Eobard Thawne, this guy, and the Harrison Wells Reverse Flash. When they show up, they'll also be alternate timeline versions of that character, like multiverse versions. The same is true for Eddie. Just because one version of him died doesn't mean there's not infinite other versions of him that could show up. That's also the backdoor to like an Eddie version of the Reverse Flash. I know everyone's kind of disappointed that he didn't go all Hunter Solomon, didn't become like a Zoom character. But one of the really big surprises of the season is that they said they originally didn't intend on killing Eddie's character. He wasn't supposed to die earlier in the season. About halfway through, they changed their minds. It's just a reminder that no matter how much they plan each season out, big things can change along the way. Like they can change their minds about certain storylines. Rick Cosnett, the actor that plays Eddie, he's not going to be a series regular though. So if he shows up, it'll be very briefly. On to number 3. Until Rip Hunter shows up, around mid-season finale time, Barry is going to keep derping across time and space. Team Flash is just going to keep making all kinds of crazy mistakes until Rip Hunter comes and explains how time travel works. He's part of the Time Masters. It's built into the name of his organization. He is master of time and space. He's like the Doctor Who of the Arrow universe. So expect Barry to make a lot of bad judgment calls, and for some of those to lead to like big falling outs within Team Flash and big consequences with the villains of the season. Like maybe it is a mistake to not go back in time and save Ronnie if he were to die. The consequence of that is that Caitlin Snow might become Killer Frost. On the other hand, remember what Harrison Wells said, if you try and change the past to avoid a big WTF catastrophe, time will find a way to replace it with another catastrophe that's just as bad, if not worse. I know everyone's wondering what the timeline of that Legends of Tomorrow trailer is, like when they all meet on the rooftop in Central City. I think that that's going to happen around the mid-season finale of Arrow and the Flash. Just to explain, like the reason that Oliver is wearing the Arrow costume, but Stephen Amell said that the Arrow costume is done. I think the reason they did it that way is because they needed to shoot footage for the upfronts, but they weren't sure where they were going to take the story in the first half of the season. Like they were still figuring it out. So they were like, okay, well, we'll just put Oliver in his Arrow costume, and then when we actually get to that moment, we'll reshoot it. So don't expect all that footage from the Legends of Tomorrow trailer to show up in the first episode. The same thing happens all the time with like the big Marvel movies. Like there's a bunch of footage in the Age of Ultron trailer that never made it into the final cut of the movie. On to number 2, we will see a whole bunch more Green Lantern related Easter eggs through Arrow crossovers and Coast City. No promises for Hal Jordan showing up, but Carol Ferris and Ferris Air are very doable things. Remember Cisco said that they had a test pilot that mysteriously disappeared. I think that's Hal Jordan. I think they'll use that to explain his absence from both of the shows, like why he doesn't appear, because he's disappeared. We have no idea where he is. Everyone else tied to his character, though, is very doable. The types of Green Lantern Easter eggs they drop, I think will be specific to each show, Arrow and The Flash, just because, Arrow tends to be a little more practical, real-world stuff, and The Flash tends to be a little more fantastical. So if they're going to drop bombs about intergalactic space cops or sentient planets, it's probably going to happen on The Flash. And finally, my number 1 prediction, we will see a bunch more speedsters like Wally West, Jay Garrick, Jesse Quick, and like a Crime Syndicate version of Barry. Some of these will be actual actors that they cast for the show. Some will be just like Easter egg level stuff. The only one that we know is confirmed that they're going to actually do an actor for at some point is Wally West. Like they just keep saying they're going to bring him on the show. We saw the Jay Garrick helmet. That means they could bring him on as an actor, or it could just stay at like helmet Easter egg level. I know a lot of people want to see John Wesley Shipp be like an alternate timeline version of Jay Garrick. That feels like a long shot. Like it's almost too on the nose. Like there's winking at the audience, and then there's like beating us over the head with something that's like way too obvious and contrived. So I'm not going to hold my breath on John Wesley Shipp, Jay Garrick, but I mean, it could happen. When Barry was traveling through time, he also saw himself in prison. I think that might be as close as we get to an evil version of Barry, but I do think there'll be Easter eggs for an evil Barry Allen, a la Johnny Quick, Crime Syndicate. Because of the show's really strong commitment to diversity, I do think that the next logical step after doing Wally West though would be doing a female speedster like Jessie Quick. No promises on them actually casting an actor for that, but they said we would see multiple other speedsters, meaning 2 or more new ones in addition to Barry. So here's my big question for you guys. If they're going to do more speedsters on the show, which ones do you want to see first and how do you want them to show up? All things are possible with a world-eating time vortex swirling above you. But here are a few things that I think the show isn't quite ready for, but that it might work up to in future seasons. First is the antimatter universe. That is just like way too outlandish for where they are right now. First, they have to explain multiverse. They have to explain more than one version of the Earth. Then you can do antimatter universe. If you've been reading Darkseid War right now, that is like one of the coolest new comic books that Geoff Johns is writing. Very big anti-Monitor storyline. Don't expect him to show up on the show anytime soon either. He is like the biggest of big bads. He's bigger than Darkseid, and the show isn't ready for New Gods Darkseid stuff yet. I feel like New Gods would be really good for Legends of Tomorrow in Season 2 or Season 3. They're calling that show like the big summer blockbuster version of The Flash and Arrow. New Gods is like such a big thing that it demands that level of spectacle, so I feel like it would fit better on that show than it would on Arrow or Flash. Just in general, I feel like the producers have done a really good job of delivering on everything they promised and everything that we've asked for as fans. There is like a logical progression. Like they have to do the small stuff first before they can work up to the crazy comic book stuff. They will all be at Comic-Con, so they'll probably be showing off new footage from all the shows, like all the new seasons. I'll be doing videos for all that. That'll be like in the beginning of July, so be sure to subscribe to get all that stuff. If there's any bonus videos you guys want before that, just leave your requests in the comments. I might do a Flash video explaining all the different versions of the Flash. There are actually like a lot if you go way back in the comics. I am still planning on doing a Q&A for Arrow and the Flash this week in Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl stuff, so feel free to leave questions for any of those shows. So while you guys wait for that, if you haven't seen it yet, you can click here for my Flash finale video, and you can click here for my Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 3 predictions. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tomorrow.